Why are you stopping ordinary people going to work or blocking roads or trains or that kind of thing? Go and protest against the oil companies. What's fascinating is Just Stop Oil did that. They blockaded oil terminals and they went and smashed up petrol pumps, directly targeting the oil companies. What happened? The oil companies went to the High Court, used incredibly expensive and fancy lawyers, hundreds of thousands of pounds, if not millions of pounds worth of lawyers, and bought their own laws called injunctions, which then stopped that protest and made it a bigger punishment to protest on an oil company forecourt than you'd get elsewhere. So they effectively stopped that protest.
Yeah.
And basically made protesters risk their homes if they carry on protesting at oil terminals or on petrol station forecourts. So then, of course, Just Stop Oil went back to the roads and protested there instead.
Yeah.
You know, and what's interesting is they did go against oil companies directly, and that was stopped by what I regard as quite an illiberal and unfair use of what's called anti-protest injunctions.
I don't think we're going to solve it here, but I was just curious about like the other tactics.
And also, I don't think it should be taken as a given that people do necessarily disagree fully with groups like Just Stop Oil, Insulate Britain, or indeed XR. There's obviously quite a strong media campaign against them. But for instance, there was a video, I think, just the other day on Twitter where people were clapping Just Stop Oil protesters on the streets. And also, more importantly, in a number of cases where these protest cases have gone in front of juries have acquitted.
Yes.
Even when it's clear the protesters were in fact blocking the street and legally it appeared that all of the law against them was made out, they still acquitted them on what's called jury nullification, which means effectively the right of juries to acquit according to their conscience. And the law is now having to react to that because they don't like it by not even letting these protesters state in court why they're protesting. So recently...
Oh my goodness.
I know, cracking down on that ancient right to trial by jury. A judge has sent people to jail for saying climate change in his court.
Oh my God, wow.
For 8 weeks, a guy got for saying why he was protesting.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And that's happening.
That is very, very chilling.
How have we ended up in this situation, Paul? You know, in terms of with this piece of legislation, is it because Just Stop Oil, I mean, I think it's incredible because I think what they've done is push the climate crisis to the forefront of the national conversation. And I think that it is to be massively commended. And part of that are specifically their tactics. I think that it's to be commended. But is it because they've been successful that we've ended up here? Or is this sort of just the Conservative Party attempting to kind of culture war its way out of having caused the kind of financial crisis? Is our right to protest a sort of casualty of the Conservative Party's inability to talk about anything successful that they've achieved as a government?
I think that's definitely part of it, although I also think that the nature of the climate crisis was somewhat going to make this kind of crunch a little bit inevitable.
Okay.
Because what we have is a predicament, effectively. We have a crisis whereby the continued operation of business as usual means the deaths of millions of people in the global south and probably the collapse of our own civilization.
Yeah.
And however, our entire society is set up in a certain way to properly stop change, and the most powerful and richest people have the greatest interest in not changing. So in that circumstance, we were always going to get people who were going to protest in a way that was going to potentially send them to jail. And we were always going to have the inevitable crackdown. And I think we're only in some ways at the start of this journey. And I don't entirely know where it's going to end up, but it is really crucial for everyone that we push back and we keep those rights. And where rights to protest are threatened, we come back and challenge them. And as an example, for instance, back on the Republican protests in autumn last year, at the time of the accession of Charles, there were reports that people were being arrested for shouting "Not My King" or having a "Not My King" sign. And so I went down there with a blank sign to try and troll them effectively.
Yeah.
To say, actually, okay, you're arresting for this, what about this?
Yeah.
And then got that officer on video saying he would arrest me if I wrote "Not My King" on it. Put that on Twitter, it went viral, and the Met issued a statement rowing back and saying, actually, no, we're not going to arrest people for having a "Not My King" sign. And next day, a group of 30 of us went and did that protest. So rights are a constant, they're not something that's sort of handed down to us on a stone tablet that are always going to be there. They're a constant evolution back and forth. And if rights are threatened, we need to push back on that.
Yeah.